Imagine the stench of London in the summer of 1305. A suffocating mix of sweat, sewage, and animal waste hangs heavy in the air. But today, it is overpowered by something else. The electric thrill of public violence. Imagine the roar of the crowd, a single, monstrous voice, rising from thousands of throats, hungry for a spectacle. Now, imagine the man at the center of it all. He is a giant, built on a scale that seems almost mythical, but he is stripped naked, his dignity stolen before God and man. He is chained fast to a crude wooden hurdle, and with every lurch of the horses, the rough cobblestones tear another strip of flesh from his back, leaving a bloody trail on the filthy street. The mob throws garbage and stones, their jeers a constant, hateful chorus against his ears. This is not merely an execution, it is a ritual of degradation, a performance of power designed for maximum suffering and public terror. This was a death meticulously crafted, not just to end a life, but to annihilate a man's very memory, to salt the earth where his legacy might grow. What could a person possibly do to provoke such a calculated and public descent into butchery? The answer is a story that begins not with a crime, but with a war. And it ends not with justice, but with the personal incandescent fury of a king who had been unforgivably humiliated. To understand the savagery of that day, we must pull back from the blood-soaked streets of London and look north, to a kingdom, left dangerously adrift. Medieval Scotland was chaos wrapped in iron. After the unexpected death of King Alexander III, the nation was plunged into a succession crisis. Into this power vacuum stepped a formidable neighbour, King Edward there of England. Known as Longshanks for his intimidating height, Edward was no simple brute. He was a brilliant, legalistic, and utterly ruthless monarch, driven by a singular obsession to forge the entire island of Britain into a single kingdom under his command. He presented himself as a benevolent guardian, an impartial judge who would oversee Scotland's transition. This was the gilded facade, a fragile piece that was merely a prelude to conquest. And in this grand game of thrones, a man named William Wallace was less than a pawn. He was a ghost, a historical non-entity. As the younger son of a minor knight, he had no land, no title, and no prospects. He was a man lost to the official records, a footnote in his own time. But when the English occupation murdered his family, something inside him did not just break, it awoke. He did not rise with gold or titles. He rose with a fury born of profound personal grief. In 1297, at the Battle of Stirling Bridge, Wallace led a band of Scottish rebels into one of the most humiliating defeats ever dealt to a professional English army. His tactics were bold, brutal, and lethally effective. For a fleeting, glorious moment, it seemed as though Scotland might just be free. But freedom has a price, and England would never forget the name Wallace. For years, Wallace fought, not just against English armies, but against the crushing silence of his own countrymen. Most Scottish nobles had bent the knee to Edward, choosing survival over sovereignty. Not Wallace. He became a ghost, a myth, a shadow slipping between the forests and the flames of a kingdom he refused to surrender. He was the living embodiment of defiance, a constant, infuriating reminder to King Edward that Scotland's spirit was not yet broken. But such a symbol cannot remain a shadow forever. Eventually, someone whispered his name to the wrong ears. The betrayal came quietly, as it always does. Sir John de Menteith, a fellow Scot who had once fought alongside him, chose a purse of English gold over loyalty. Near Glasgow, Wallace was captured. There was no grand battle, no heroic last stand, just the cold finality of ropes, chains, and the silence of a dream extinguished. England had its prize, but King Edward I was not satisfied with a simple capture. He wanted a message carved in agony. Wallace's journey to London was not a transport. It was humiliation in slow motion. Stripped of his dignity, he was paraded like a beast through English towns for weeks, bound in filth, spat upon by crowds, and displayed like a caged animal. Yet he never begged. He never wept. It is said he looked every jeering face in the eye, as if memorizing each soul who cheered his downfall. To the English, He was a monster. But the way they treated him revealed who the real monsters were. On August 23, 1305, he stood trial in Westminster Hall. It was a theatre of justice, not a court of law. The judges had already written his fate. He was charged with treason, sacrilege, and murder. But here, in this moment of ultimate powerlessness, Wallace delivered his final immortal act of defiance. When accused of being a traitor to King Edward, he declared, "I cannot be a traitor, for I owe him no allegiance. He is not my sovereign. He never received my homage. And whilst life is in this persecuted body, he never shall receive it." The sentence was as chilling as it was predictable. He would be hanged, but not to death. Disemboweled while still breathing. His insides burned before his own eyes. His body then beheaded and butchered into 4 parts. This was not justice. This was a performance, written in blood and cruelty. Dawn broke over London. The city had been preparing for days. Wooden scaffolds were hammered into place. Vendors sold roasted meat and ale to the waiting crowd. Children clutched their mothers' hands. Everyone came not for justice, but for entertainment, because what they were about to witness was medieval theatre at its most depraved. Wallace was tied to a hurdle, a wooden frame designed to be dragged through mud and stone. He was pulled from the Tower of London through the city's busiest streets. The cobblestones shredded his skin. Every bump was a fresh wound. The crowd roared, a wave of jeers and laughter washing over him. At Smithfield, the scaffold loomed above the crowd like a dark altar. Wallace was hoisted up and hanged by the neck, but he was not allowed the mercy of a quick death. He was choked, his body convulsing, until he was just at the edge of unconsciousness, and then they cut him down. He was alive. What came next silenced even the most bloodthirsty in the crowd. The executioner pulled a knife. With slow, deliberate cruelty, he opened Wallace's abdomen. Wallace was still conscious, his face pale, his mouth bloodied, but his eyes were still open. One by one, his organs were pulled from his body, held high for the crowd to see, and then thrown into a waiting fire. As Wallace watched his own life being consumed by the flames, the crowd gasped. Some turned away, others cheered, but everyone knew this was no ordinary death. Finally, when his breath was but a shudder, the executioner raised his axe, one clean stroke, and the head fell. But not even in death was Wallace granted peace. The executioner took his blade again, this time not to kill, but to divide. His arms were removed, his legs hacked from his torso. Blood spilled over the wooden scaffold like ink on a death warrant. Wallace was not just executed, he was disassembled, his body turned into 4 gruesome warnings. His head, blackened with tar, was hoisted on a spike above London Bridge. It stayed there for years, its once fierce eyes now empty, staring at the Thames as it flowed like time itself. The 4 quarters of his body were sent north, one to Newcastle, another to Berwick, one to Stirling, the site of his greatest victory, and one to Perth. These were not random choices. This was message warfare. Challenge England, and you will end like this. King Edward believed he had killed a rebellion. He thought that by destroying the man, he could destroy the idea. But he had done something far worse. He had created a martyr. Wallace's death did not silence Scotland. It ignited it. His dismembered body became a map, not of fear, but of righteous rage. Across the north, whispers grew into roars, and within a year, Robert the Bruce rose, not with words, but with fire and steel. What Edward tried to destroy became Scotland's rallying cry. Wallace had no crown, no grand army, just one man's refusal to bow. His death was designed to break spirits. Instead, it carved courage into a nation's bones. In every battlefield that followed, soldiers whispered his name. In every tavern, mothers told their children of the man who died in pieces but never surrendered. They took his life, but they could not take his cause. He did not live to see Scotland free, but without his fall, it never would have stood. In the heart of London, long after the cheers died, His severed head watched silently from that bridge. A face meant to warn, but it became something else entirely. A symbol of defiance. A ghost that refused to vanish. William Wallace didn't just die. He was reborn in every generation that chooses resistance over submission.